The doctrine of eternal punishments had its time, from the pedagogy of fear to enlightened consciousness. The doctrine of eternal punishments exerted, for centuries, a profound influence on human behavior. At a certain point in history, it served a pedagogical function, to contain impulses, impose limits, and morally organize societies that were still immature from an ethical and intellectual standpoint. From this historical perspective, it can be said that this doctrine had its time. In contexts where scientific knowledge was non-existent and the psychology of consciousness had not even been outlined, fear functioned as a primitive educational resource. The threat of eternal suffering after death served as a moral brake for populations that still did not understand inner responsibility or the natural consequences of their own choices. Modern psychology confirms this phenomenon. In the early stages of moral development, both individual and collective, rigid rules and severe punishments produce obedience. However, this type of control does not promote ethical maturity. It limits growth to fear, without developing true awareness, empathy, or responsibility. Spiritism recognizes this historical role without undermining the moral intentions of the past. However, it clarifies that humanity evolves, and with it, its ways of understanding justice, spirituality, and life itself evolve. What was useful in a childish phase of collective consciousness becomes inadequate when human beings begin to question, reflect, and seek rational coherence. Modern science reinforces this transition. Biology shows that organisms mature and abandon primitive mechanisms as they develop more complex structures. The history of humanity reveals the same pattern. Societies evolve from authoritarianism to systems based on accountability, rights, and ethical awareness. Spirituality accompanies this movement. The doctrine of eternal punishment conflicts with this maturity because it relies on the stagnation of consciousness. It assumes that the spirit can remain frozen forever in a state of error, with no possibility of learning. This contradicts everything we observe in nature, which constantly points to adaptation, transformation, and progress. Spiritism proposes, then, a spirituality compatible with a maturing humanity. It replaces fear with understanding, threat with conscious responsibility. Good ceases to be practiced to avoid punishment, and becomes lived through the understanding of the natural laws that govern life and consciousness. To say that the doctrine of eternal punishments had its time is not to deny it historically, but to recognize it as a step already surpassed. Humanity is now called to a higher level of spiritual understanding, where love, justice, and the possibility of regeneration occupy the center of moral experience. If this reflection has helped you understand the evolution of spiritual and moral ideas over time, like, share, and leave your comment. Your participation helps this message reach more people.